Just before we go on with anything else, I think it's important that the mayor advise the citizens and council of the, I've circulated the news release on the gas generation plant, and that the OPA announced today that they have awarded the contract to Trans-Canada Pipelines, and the project will be in Oakville, on the, I believe, the property next to the Ford Motor, or connected with the Ford Motor Company. I want to congratulate the citizens on the extreme protests that they put up. Both the citizens of Mississauga joined with the citizens of Oakville. It's unfortunate that the decision is still in the Clarkson airshed study area, which has been the concern from a health point of view. The need for such a plant was also raised. There was data provided to the province and to the OPA that clearly indicated that the need is not there at this time, and that the process followed by the OPA in the past to look at the need in accordance with the research that was done proved that it was flawed. But in spite of that, so we're going to have the plant in the Clarkson airshed study in Oakville. It is very encouraging, though, to know that the Minister of the Environment is launching a new task force. As you know, they did have a task force that they set up 3 or 4 years ago, but it did nothing and really went nowhere. This time they're promising to do it again. We'll be required to develop and report back by the end of June 2010 on a detailed action plan to improve air quality through the reduction of emissions from local industrial, vehicular, and residential sources in the Southwest GTA. Now that means that it will not just be in the Clarkson area, which I think will be good news to the people of Port Credit, that it will cover the entire South Mississauga. So therefore, the Port Credit concerns about the Moreland plant obviously will be addressed and will be recognized to do the reductions. Will include air quality improvement targets, timelines, strategies, and reporting requirements. The Ontario Power Authority will invest up to $30 million over 5 years on a new industrial energy efficiency program to reduce both electricity and gas consumption in the Southwest GTA. Continue to deliver major energy savings. The OPA is working to achieve 500 megawatts of conservation in the West GTA by 2014. This is the equivalent to the power used by 5 million 100-watt light bulbs. Establishing a working group on cleaner energy and industrial efficiency with cement company Wholesome Canada Incorporated, which is St. Lawrence Cement, along with MEI and OPA, to examine cleaner industrial emissions, including the feasibility of various options related to demand-side management, cogeneration, and fuel mix optimization, all with the goal of increasing efficiency and improving the plant's overall emission profile. Maximize the potential of the new feed-in tariff in the Southwest GTA by working closely with local distribution companies to find opportunities for renewable energy generation. Since 2000, the Ontario government has been actively working with community and scientific experts to address air quality in the area, including a 4-part Clarkson airshed study. They're taking recognition that they did do a Clarkson airshed study. The most significant air quality improvement initiative was the closure of Mississauga's coal-fired Lakeview Generating Station in 2005, the equivalent to removing 500,000 cars from Ontario roads. The government has also undertaken a number of specific initiatives in the Clarkson community, including working with the local industrial association on a plan for air quality monitoring, culminating in the building of 2 air monitoring stations now underway. It also established a website to provide the public with regular updates on the freeze that was issued. So we do have the plan, but I want to express to Councillor Mullen, who with her citizens have really given an awful lot of time and talents to this issue. And it's very disappointing that this has occurred. I think the health issue is very prominent in the minds of the citizens, and I hope that what the province plans to do now, that they will fulfill that promise, the promise that was made before but not fulfilled, that it will be fulfilled this time on behalf of the citizens. Because that area, according to the province, is stressed with pollution. And we had hoped that if there was a gas generation plant in South Mississauga, or in this area, in South Ontario along the waterfront, that it would not be in the parks and airship study area. But the province has made that decision, and now we must go on. I know that Councillor Mullen and I and the citizens pledged to the Oakville citizens our full support as this plant goes through an environmental assessment to make sure that every I is dotted and every T crossed in regard to making sure that every effort is made to reduce the emissions in the area that the province has said is stressed with pollution. But at the same time, if we accept what the province has said in the OPA, I think the whole south of Mississauga will benefit from the efforts made by the citizens of the parks and the Oakville area. Councillor Mullen, I don't know if you wish to make a statement as the...
it took 30 years for them to initiate a study called the Clarkson Airshed Study. But first I would like to thank you, Madam Mayor, and certainly the number of residents that have been involved in this issue, and how time-consuming, and it hasn't just been over the last few months, as you know, it's been ongoing for years and years. It goes back the history and the time that has been spent on trying to improve the situation in our area. I guess I just had an opportunity to go through the news release, and I guess what it says to me that they're willing to invest $30 million over 5 years, yet they're not willing to invest in the health issue that we have been putting forward time and time again over the many years that many of us have lived down there. So I find it interesting. $30 million, quite frankly, is a small price to pay when you're dealing with the health of citizens. And I think the trust factor is not there. We went through 2 years of an advisory committee that was set up, nothing was done. Now they're looking at a new task force. So it's a lot of promises, and there's no goals or timing on this, and I have a lot of concerns. So it says to me that they recognize that there's an issue, and yet they're still going ahead. So there's something wrong in
Been there, done that.
The Premier, in my view, had an opportunity to be a real leader here. He had an opportunity to stop this. He had an opportunity to say we need some time to look at all of the information that was given, not only the health issues, but the issue of demand, which, as you know, was very, very well presented down at the press release. It clearly shows that the demand is not there, that it has decreased significantly, and that the growth is not there. So he had an opportunity to be a real leader. He had an opportunity to use this as a test pilot project where we could have looked at conservation and come out as a win-win, as opposed to putting perishing a monstrosity such as this into our community. I hope that the Premier, along with all of his ministers, can sign a document to say there's going to be no health effects, folks, when this is up and running. I would ask that the Minister and the Premier sign such a document to assure the residents that there will not be any health effects. They keep referring to the Lakeview plant and the closure of the Lakeview plant, not that that's any rationale for bringing in another polluter when we have already significant heavy polluters in the community. But we have indicated to him time and time again that Lakeview did not affect the Clarkson area. Lakeview affected the east part of Port Credit and, quite frankly, the GTA. So what the province has done, in my view, is very, very disappointing. We have a ring of gas plants now surrounding the GTA. And let me assure you, it's not going to be the effects just of the Clarkson area. It's going to be the effects of all of us in Mississauga as this builds up over time. There's no question that gas plants should not be in residential areas. Never mind Mississauga, never mind Clarkson, Mississauga, they should not be in residential areas. There was an opportunity to look at a lot of other alternatives. We talked about the flawed process, we talked about the demand, we talked about the health. Clearly it was on deaf ears, so it is extremely disappointing. I look forward to certainly the improvements. I look forward to certainly working with Oakville and dealing with the environmental. This particular site will affect Clarkson just as much as the others will because of the way the winds blow.
Yeah.
It is still in the Clarkson airshed. So we might say it's in Oakville, but guess what, folks? It's going to affect all of us. So it is disappointing. It's disappointing that they recognize the fact that they've suddenly come up with $30 million and yet cannot take the courage to say that they've made a mistake. They can't do that. And I think, to me, the success of any leader is one that steps back and says, I've made a mistake. We need to look back. We need to think about this as being regressive. And we need to redo the numbers and take another look at this whole situation. And they didn't have the courage to do that.
Shock.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Corus?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to clarify for the viewing audience that the Loreland plant does not have a real effect on Port Credit. I think why you're putting Port Credit into the mix is because a resident from Port Credit did meet with you on gas power plants and brought up the Loreland site. That resident, as Councillor Mullen has reiterated, does not believe gas power plants should go anywhere near residential or any other sensitive land use. The Loreland plant will definitely have an effect for the residents that are up on Dundas Street. Both Councillor Prentice and myself will be affected. It would be wonderful, notwithstanding that it's disappointing that we are getting a 900 megawatt plant in Oakville, if the province could now come out and say, you know what, we don't need that 280 megawatt one on Loreland. Years ago when they approved Loreland, there was a much greater need for, I think back then it was 1,800 megawatts was the prediction. So we'll see what happens on the Loreland site. I would also like to acknowledge Charles Sousa, the MPP for Mississauga South. Mr. Sousa has taken a lot of criticism from a lot of people that I think should have been directed at Mr. Smitherman or Mr. Gerritsen or Premier McGuinty. I know Mr. Sousa did appear at all the rallies. He didn't walk away. He didn't skirt the issue. I know it was very difficult for him to go against his government, but that he did. And I can tell you, I go to a lot of AGMs and public meetings with Mr. Sousa. We were at one last night, and he's always stood up and told the people how he feels, because his and his family, of course, live in the area. So I do want to acknowledge the efforts of Charles Sousa in this matter as well.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Councillor Carverson, because he has been with us all the way. And quite honestly, I just was on the phone with him saying that he is just as disappointed as we are that the plan has been approved. And I think he has made every effort. I know he's talked to the Premier, he's talked to Mr. Smitherman to try to get them to, because he lives in the area for one thing. He lives in the area, and he has been very supportive. In fact, he worked very hard to get representatives of the Ministry of the Environment when the Minister couldn't come to the public meeting. He worked to try to get somebody. He even went to the Premier's office to say that this public meeting was being held, and surely that those two ministries should have been represented at the meeting. The OPA did summon somebody, but he couldn't answer any questions because he didn't have a plan, and obviously even the news release today says there isn't a plan, they're going to create one to do it. So Charles has been with us all the way. I would not like to tell you the number of phone calls that he and I have had over this issue and the many other phone calls. And I think, quite honestly, the government to some degree has let him down as well in this regard. But he stood his stand, even though I'm sure to win favor with the party, he would should have maybe not been on our side because party politics are pretty strong. So he did. So I have no question about Charles Sousa's effort in this regard. Councillor Mullen?
Yes, Madam Mayor, and I do apologize for not including Charles. I guess my anger is somewhat taking over today, seeing this press release, but I too want to acknowledge Charles. Having been down at the legislature, I think you and I looked at each other and said, because this is why we haven't been involved in running provincially, when you have to sort of toe the party line, and it does take a lot of courage to stand up against your own party on an issue such as this. And it's been a long, hard battle for him in that regard. Not easy trying to deal with other colleagues, trying to get them on side as well. And he didn't have a lot of support at the beginning, as you know. No. It was only towards the end that some of his colleagues came on side. So it's not easy, and having been there on Monday, looking at the situation, I would applaud him in terms of his efforts. So I thank Carmen for mentioning that.
Councillor Parrish?
Yes, I want to thank Charles as well on behalf of everybody who is, because I've been there, done that, and when you step out of line with the rest of your party, you're making yourself extremely vulnerable. And the thing about Charles is he's not by nature doomed to be a backbencher. He's a very talented, very highly placed, very qualified man. It probably would have been on a career path to be a cabinet minister. And he knew what he was doing when he did it. And the guy's got a heart as big as a mountain. And he's got a lot of integrity. So you guys may never know how much he gave up to do this. So he's just done an incredible job. Everybody should be very proud of him.
He issued a news release. I don't have it. He expresses his disappointment in the decision, which he's quite, well, he supports what they want to do, but he doesn't know, as well as the rest of us, don't know what they're going to do. It's just still a big question mark. Okay.
Are you ready for this?
Just stop there.
After 16 years as leader of the Ontario Liberal Party, and after 9 years as Premier, it's time for renewal. It's time for the next Liberal Premier. It's time for the next set of Liberal ideas to guide our province forward. To that end, a moment ago, I spoke with the president of our party, Yasser Naqvi. I've asked that he convene a leadership convention at the earliest possible opportunity. It will be my honor to continue to serve you and Ontarians as Premier until such time as our party's elected a new leader who's been sworn in.